afternoon, everyone, and welcome to yet another wonderful session that we have with the Toastmaster of the Day. And this week, I am extremely fortunate to have with me Tigist from Blue Nile Toastmasters. So first of all, Tigist, karibu sana to Anchored. And for those of us who have not had the wonderful luck of meeting you yet, would you please introduce yourself to us?
Okay, thank you so much, Omondi. And I have to start by thanking the president of the club and the leadership for giving me this wonderful privilege to be Toastmaster of the Day for the upcoming meeting. My name is Tigist Hailu. I live in Addis Ababa. I'm a member of the Blue Nile Toastmasters Club, which I'm sure you know is the first Toastmasters Club in East Africa. And I'm doubly proud to say that I'm a second generation Blue Niler. Both my parents used to be Toastmasters. I work in the international development sector. I love Kenya. That's the other thing about me. I take every opportunity to visit. And as some of my friends call me, I am half Kenyan and with enough Swahili to back it up. So that's a bit about me.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Could I quickly ask you, you mentioned international development. Does this mean you're currently on Nairobi, or rather you mentioned international development and visiting. So does this mean you're currently in Nairobi for work or to visit, or for both?
I'm here for a brief visit, on a personal visit.
Okay, that's wonderful. And maybe one thing that I really love to do is when you go through pathways, there's a question that often sticks out to me in that how does this relate to your real life or something of the sort? And for someone who's working within international development and still quite committed to Toastmasters, how do you see those things balancing out? In what ways do they complement each other? And if any, in what ways do those things sometimes conflict with each other?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned, I grew up close to the environment of Toastmasters. My parents used to take us to club meetings growing up. So I had that orientation. My father is a very enthusiastic storyteller and public speaker. So I grew up with an appreciation how Toastmasters can help you in being a better communicator, a better leader. And I've been away from that scene once my parents have retired. And then I actually joined very recently, formally. But I've already gotten into it with a lot of enthusiasm because I grew up around it and I understand how it helps personal growth. There's a lot of networking that happens. It's not just the practice of public speaking that I have observed that you gain from Toastmasters. Your network broadens automatically. It opens you up to many like-minded people from the country, beyond the country where you come from. So there's a lot of learning, which you can't almost quantify, that happens there. And given that it's a global platform, it's also doubly useful for people like me who work in intercultural environments that involve, collaborating across different countries. So there is absolutely no contradiction, but just a lot of rewards to be gained from, being an active member in Toastmasters.
That's what we all like to hear. You have mentioned culture, and maybe let me build up upon on this question of culture. While in Nairobi, have you had the chance to attend or visit other clubs? And when you compare clubs in Kenya and clubs in Ethiopia, are there any significant differences in the way people learn, the way people go through their meetings and such like things? Are there any differences, and what do you think one experience could borrow from? Yeah.
That's a very interesting question. I haven't been to, like, say, a large variety of clubs in Nairobi. I've only visited two, and one of them is Anchored. But I would say I'm exposed to most of the clubs in Ethiopia. One thing that fascinates me about Toastmasters is the general, let's say, parameters in terms of quality of meetings, the meeting etiquette, the objective is quite consistent. So wherever you go, wherever you attend club meetings, you find that the standards almost uniformly apply. But what I always find, even when visiting different clubs within Ethiopia, or my experience with the few I have visited in Kenya, is that because there are so many diverse backgrounds that are represented in people and personalities, what I see is, the flavor that every person brings to the table. So of course there are a lot of perceptible, let's say, cultural richness. The obvious one between Ethiopia and Kenya would be perhaps the language and the specific cultures that you would attribute to the two countries separately. But generally, in each Toastmasters club, I find that there's always a discernible level of flavor that each club has comes with. So I don't know if I would say like clubs in Ethiopia and Kenya are different in particular ways. The club culture generally applies, but there's a lot of cultural flavor that you'd find when you move from club to club.
I think that's great. In an increasingly localized world, it's great to see that however far you travel, you can still access the wonderful resource that is Toastmasters, and a lot of us have been huge beneficiaries of this resource, its content, its networks, and so on and so forth. Another thing I'm very keen to ask is my introduction with Blue Nile, I think, was over, if not last year, then the year before last, and this was in a debate. And I must say, the Toastmasters who were debating and representing Blue Nile were of an exceptional standard. Is this by chance, or is this something that you at Blue Nile are really working hard to do so? And if we may indulge you while on this side of the border, what secrets can you steal for us so that we can also produce such esteemed debaters?
I'm very pleased to hear that testimony about my club, which I'm a very proud member of. I have been with the Blue Nile Toastmasters Club as a member for just about 4 months now, but my exposure, of course, goes way beyond. And I think Blue Nile Toastmasters Club stands out in terms of its very strong heritage. Like I said, during the period when my parents used to attend, a lot of renowned personalities within Ethiopia, very seasoned lawyers, artists, historians, all kinds of very high towering personalities were the ones that founded the club. And I see that heritage being carried through in terms of like the seriousness and the high standards that the club tries to maintain in terms of its running. And since I joined, what I've also observed is a very strong leadership, very cohesive, very dynamic and committed leadership that is currently leading the club. So I feel maybe those two could be part of the reason why Blue Nile stands out.
Okay, and it's very explainable rather. And again, it's I always get really fascinated when you see this clear link between people's individual lives or people's personal lives and Toastmasters. And the reason I say this is sometimes it's easy to treat Toastmasters as the little thing on the side that you do. And there's a bit of a gap between Tigist, the rest of you, and maybe the Toastmaster that you are. But I'm often so impressed when you see such a clear link between people who not only live out Toastmasters on the bi-monthly meetings, but also you can see some of the characters of those things in their daily lives.
Oh, that's absolutely true. I think as a member, maybe for me, I feel at an advantage right now because I've had a lot of conscious reflection before I became a formal member recently. I came in with full understanding of what Toastmaster offers. So I'm doing my best to tap all the opportunities it offers. And I think that level of, recognition in terms of how you can optimally use Toastmasters, because you said, yeah, we can be casual attendants or you can be very seasoned visitors to Toastmasters. But I think the moment people are alive to what it means in terms of development of their professional lives and even richness of life in terms of having connected to like-minded people, I think members would be a lot more strongly engaged, because Toastmasters is really a great place for personal development.
I agree, and I'd love to squeeze in one last question before we move on to the theme. And you've mentioned the level of introspection that you had to do in weighing up things before you took the decision to join Toastmasters. And often within Kenya, I think there's no day that you can go without someone making, sometimes it's a joke, but sometimes it's the reality of life or the cost of living getting really, really high. And people are often in a position where you're making very difficult decisions between literally, do I invest in Toastmasters or do I choose to use my limited resources to do something else? And we are also coming up to March, which is renewal season, or renewal season is quickly upon us. So maybe for the people who are battling through, should I invest in Toastmasters or should I not? What about your own introspection that finally led you to take the decision to join Toastmasters would you love to share with them? To hopefully also guide their decision making on how they can see this beyond, I need to pay this amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting question. I think for me, it also had to do with the season in my life. It's good when opportunities find you hungry. You're working through a certain personal development challenge, maybe a career transition, or an awareness that your network need to be, richer and wider than it currently is, or an awareness that you need to consciously work on developing your leadership skills or communication skills. That personal, let's say, understanding of your own need based on where you want to get to in terms of your professional and personal journey, I think is very critical in making that decision. What I also found to be missing is how well members understand how big this platform is, and how much you can utilize it beyond being coming to club meetings and engaging in a bare minimum way. I think this would also very well linked into the theme of the day that we have picked, is about appreciating Toastmasters for the reach and quite resourceful platform that it is on a global scale. So I think personal dynamics, timing, because it requires also time commitment, and you'll have to get into it consciously if you want to be an active member. Like you said, also resources, which are, right now are very difficult to probably prioritization is also a challenge given the economic situation we're in. But the other side of it is also an awareness of the value, so people can make that determination to even do it sacrificially. So I think it's a combination of all these for me.
Okay, that's really wonderful. And you've mentioned a little bit about global reach, and I think this is a wonderful segue to the theme that you've chosen for our meeting this coming Friday. It's the Gateway to Global Conversations. For those of us who may also be battling about how should I spend my Friday at Anchored, what would you love to say to tease them and finally convince them that them coming to Anchored Toastmasters this Friday is a worthy investment of their time?
Absolutely. I think the explanation behind the team wonderfully builds into the conversation we have carried up to this point. Is about, when you come to Toastmasters, you're not just coming into a local club where, few people gather and, some regimented activity happens. It's a gateway into a much more richer resource that extends beyond that immediate club. And I think me being an Ethiopian, more or less a fresh member of a Toastmasters club, in Ethiopia, but having given this honor and opportunity to be a Toastmaster of the evening in Nairobi, not many people in the club know me, apart from the fact that I'm a Toastmaster, I think is very illustrative of what the theme also tries to sort of exemplify, that wherever you go, doors open for you to engage on a much bigger platform, on an intercultural platform with a very big network that you wouldn't be ordinarily able to access when you join Toastmasters. So I think the conversation we're going to try weave into the entire meeting is to basically offer insights into how Toastmasters, members of the anchored Toastmasters Club and those who will be present can really be alive to the breadth of opportunities as a global platform that Toastmasters offers.
That's fantastic. I think so in conversations like this, there's a lot of madness and there's a lot of expectation with regards to what you're going to get while in Toastmasters and also in a particular meeting, and also people really applying themselves and making themselves available for opportunity. I'd like to turn this on its head a little bit and ask, in many ways we can expect and reach out and put ourselves in positions to gain particular opportunities. But maybe for you, what is something that has happened either in Toastmasters or in your own career that you didn't quite expect, but still worked out quite well for you, or still had a very good outcome?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. And it may be difficult for me to point to one big incident on the fly. My mind seems to be drawing a blank right now. But I can confidently tell you whatever good that has happened in my life happened because other people opened a certain door or shared an insight that was transformative in terms of how I saw my life or the opportunities around me, or enriched me, or gave me, certain, type of new understanding or view. So for me, right now, I am somebody who has grown to be very much appreciative of networks and people, all individuals that I meet in every, opportunity. And the benefit of that compounds even more when you are meeting on a like-minded platform like Toastmasters, which already gives you a lot to work with in terms of, engaging and collaborating. So I could, cite maybe, I don't know, 100 stories of, good things that have happened in my life. But the common thread across is people I have met, and some people I haven't known even for a very long time, that have, left a print in my life, either pointing me to an opportunity or opening it themselves or sharing insights that have enriched me, in many ways.
That's fantastic. It reminds me of, I'm very fortunate to lead a startup that is based out of Nairobi, and up until a few years ago, I had, and in many ways still suffer with a level of social anxiety. And personally, I don't even think hated is the right word to say. I don't like networking. Anything that involves me going to a room full of strangers and just having unstructured, off the cuff conversations with people in the hope that it would end up somewhere was something that I found to be extremely impossible to do. And one of the greatest pieces of advice that I got from one of our company's advisors is, Alex, please remember that people do business with people. And I guess when you break it down to that level and see people for what they're also truly seeking, that they're in a very similar position. It's people looking for connections. It's people who are all trying to learn. It's people who are within reason have a shared goal. Then I guess networking and other things like this become quite significantly easier to do.
Absolutely. And I think I can relate with you, Omondi, in being socially awkward. I think I still am, but it's a challenge I have determined to continue taking. I think through life also you learn that we're all awkward at many different things, and what it requires to perfect a skill that you consider to be valuable to you is practice, right? So go out and, embarrass yourself a few times if need be. And I think the spirit of Toastmasters for me also aligns a lot with that. You're not examined before you're given a role. It's basically a safe space where you can try, taking on different responsibilities, and you have a supportive environment. I think that's also the spirit I'm taking into my life outside Toastmasters, of being willing to be vulnerable and, fail if need be, but keep on, practicing, because I know there is nothing that, you can develop without practice. So for me, networking is definitely a growth area that I identified. It's not an area of strengths, to be very frank with you, but I have seen that it's a challenge worth taking. So I completely relate with what you said.
It's perfect. I almost wish we didn't have anything else to add to that, but I will ask one last question. For anyone who may be in Addis and looking for a wonderful club, where does Blue Nile Toastmasters meet and on what days?
Yes. The Blue Nile Toastmaster Club meets fortnightly at a place called Ice Addis, which is near the Bole Medhanialem area. The Blue Nile Toastmasters Club has active platforms on LinkedIn, on Facebook. So you can basically also reach out to us to warmly welcome you and give you proper directions to where we are if you're new in town. But yes, we welcome especially out of town guests to come to our meetings. Thank you.
It's fantastic. Tigist, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. I hope many people, if they were not already convinced, I hope many people will be flocking to Luther Plaza on Friday, and even flocking to Addis to hear more wonderful people and see more wonderful clubs and the excellent work that Toastmasters is doing all around the world. So once more, thank you for taking the time to join us this evening, and we are all really looking forward to seeing you on Friday.
Thank you so much, Omondi. I enjoyed conversing with you, and I look forward to seeing everybody on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karibu sana.